Hello, everyone. My name is Shad Eid, and I'm a digital transformation lead at Morta. My journey throughout the last 10 years has been about helping organizations automate and digitize processes. Today, I will be speaking about data-driven design management and how design managers can use database-driven solutions to improve their planning, tracking, and model assurance. I come from a civil engineering background, but I also love technology. So for me, it's really exciting to be living in a time where we see things like generative AI, Internet of Things, and digital twins. However, the reality is that most of construction is still managed on traditional tools like Excel and Word. And don't get me wrong, Excel and Word are amazing. Like, I consider Excel to be one of the most powerful tools. And I'm sure many of you here are used to using it on a day-to-day basis. It's customizable, it's flexible, and I can build most of the things I want. And due to that versatility and popularity, it's been heavily relied on in almost all industries. But is there a limit to its use? Let's examine that on the next slide. In a typical work environment, documents are used to store or to exchange knowledge and information. Some of this information is extracted from point solutions, while other forms of information is created within those documents. So for example, a design manager would export a schedule from BIM authoring tool and shares it with the sustainability and commercial departments. They receive this original file, they fill in their part independently, and then send it back to the design manager who consolidates all this information back to one document. So we quickly noticed that everyone is working in a silo. There is no direct governance on data quality. I mean, sure, you can add formulas in Excel, you can add data validations, and you can lock certain columns, but someone can easily mess things up by inputting text instead of numbers or a date in the incorrect format and things like that. And even if you figured that data quality part out, and if you have, please reach out, because I think all of us can really benefit from that. This whole process remains still manual. So what are the effects of using these tools? First off, poor visibility. Second, a lot of time is wasted reminding people to do things. Third, there is risk of human error because of data entry, and that could cause potential project delays, all sorts of things, overrun budgets, even safety risks. In my opinion, one of the most overlooked things is the loss of opportunity, mainly because intelligence is still locked within documents instead of it being shared in a system across different projects and teams. So in recent years, many no-code/low-code solutions came about to replace Excel and Word in certain use cases. Some of these tools you may be familiar with, like Airtable and Notion, but also big players like Microsoft, realizing the gap in the market, also released their own collaboration app called Loop. Now, these tools are designed to be easy to use, accessible, and database-driven, and they do solve most of the things that Excel couldn't solve. But I would say if you go and try one of these solutions, you'll quickly realize that they're not optimized for construction. Which brings me to Morta. Morta is the only low-code/no-code solution built for the construction industry. It offers one-click integrations to popular construction solutions like Viewpoint, Autodesk Construction Cloud, Revisto, and many more, just within seconds. Our team has a deep understanding of construction processes and automation, so you'll get the best-in-class support. And we've built out-of-the-box templates that you can copy to kickstart your journey. You can customize later on, and if you have your own workbook that you've been using for years, you can just shift that and import it directly into Morta. We all know how difficult it is to invite external collaborators to your organization's SharePoint. So Morta made it very easy for you to onboard external individuals without additional costs. Lastly, this is not construction specific, and we're not the first people to do this, but Morta is API enabled. so the information can be pushed back and forth between Morta and different systems. One important partnership that we've recently done is with a company called Dyroots. So they specialize in building custom solutions on Autodesk software, Bentley, etc. And they have a free plugin on Revit, which is called Dyroots, and particularly SheetLink, which allows anyone using Revit to push data back to Morta. Basically allows for a two-way communication. And our next community session is on Monday, February 26th. So feel free to scan the QR code to register for that event and see how we plan the next phase of work between Morta and Dyroots. So across the last 5 years or so, we've worked with a multitude of organizations, ranging from owners, multidisciplinary designers, contractors, and consultancies. And this comes to show the flexibility and adaptability of Morta. And it's basically debunks one of the most, like the biggest misconceptions out there, that Morta is a point solution. So you see the title here is Get the Basics Right. And what we see typically is organizations start with one use case on Morta, but then quickly realize that they can connect other systems like carbon and cost and risk. This unlocks other opportunities to link those trackers together, so you can easily populate a risk register automatically when a design deliverable gets laced. Another major benefit is Morta automates the heavy lifting for you. For example, let's say you're a design manager and you're working with 10 design firms for 10 different disciplines. Instead of you having to create 10 different worksheets, sending it to them, and then consolidating and reminding them every now and then to submit their information, what you can simply do is create one table with one dynamic view, share that link to these 10 different designers, assign the correct permissions in Morta so that they see their own portion of that table, and then they all work within the same table. The information doesn't have to be manually consolidated at the end of their work. Let's continue to the next slide. So Morta can boost productivity by automating manual work. Reference tables can be set up and utilized by all the teams. For example, you'd have a standardized list of originators, and individuals can reference that same list, ensuring consistent naming throughout all your produced documents and reports. We're seeing that many organizations have improved visibility and ownership on their data. And as I've mentioned before, Morta enables collaboration between internal and external stakeholders. So back to design managers. One of the most popular use cases is tracking deliverables. And we've seen that information is supplied mainly by three sources: designers, who share their different trackers with the design manager, the client, who supplies the specifications and requirements, and the planner, who informs the design manager of key milestones. All this information is manually integrated on tools like Excel, and then pushed to a document controller, and then reports can be generated on top of this data. So where does Morta help in this particular use case? So it helped many organizations streamline this process. Each tab you see on the left is a table belonging to a certain team, which feeds into one main table that has all the disciplines that are being tracked, all the design disciplines. And this could seamlessly integrate with things like the CDE, for example, Autodesk Construction Cloud, Viewpoint, Revisto, Power BI. And we basically removed the friction and manual work that has to be done by the design manager. For teams that do not have access to Power BI, Morta does have a beta charting feature. So you can create a simple chart. We're not trying to replace Power BI, but you can create a simple chart and share it with the rest of the team. The next use case that is widely popular among design managers is accessing model data. Basically, what that means is previously you'd have to export either a schedule of information takeoff from tools like Solibri or a schedule from tools like Revit, share them via Excel, send them to the supply chain for them to fill the data, and then you get the story. Again, manual aggregation of Excel sheets into a report. But then there is no real governance on the process. So someone might fill wrong data in the Excel without you knowing, and the confidence in the data really isn't that much. So we, as I mentioned before, we do connect to Revit, so you can extract data from Revit into Morta, invite your supply chain into that table to fill specific columns or specific portions of that table. And then we can automatically write back. The write back feature is currently being developed. It should be available within the next 2 months. And if you're using IFC, we'll also extract information from IFC into tables, and the same process goes. You invite external or even internal stakeholders into that table. They fill what they need to fill, and then we enrich the IFC file by uploading a new version of that IFC file to your CDE. So opening model data doesn't necessarily just mean enriching the model data. If you combine the quantities in the model with cost or carbon data, you can easily generate a model-driven cost or carbon report. You can attach sensor, material sensor, IoT devices, and link that back to the model to automatically report progress on certain activities or operations that are going on your site. A couple of case studies that we've from organizations we've worked with. Sphere Entertainment Co. was one of the early adopters of Morta. Their main challenge is achieving surety of outcome across a complex program of projects, and they developed something which they called the standard data model, where it's modular and fits any location, even with system restrictions or data residency issues. And they've been really benefiting from Morta, so they've built things like handover validation, payment validation, cost planning tracking, and Morta has integrated with over the 25 plus ERP and accounting systems like Sage 300, Coins, field and gating systems, and logistics and OCR systems, and most importantly, of course, Autodesk Construction Cloud. And second is the Ministry of Justice. The Ministry of Justice in the UK has the second largest estate with over 1,600 assets, ranging from prisons, courts, tribunals, etc. Due to the immense size and magnitude of their estate, they face challenges that aren't typically faced. So traditional tools like Excel were not fit for purpose, and they needed a data-centric and purpose-led approach. So as well, they're using Morta for several use cases like requirements management, information delivery, planning and tracking, program and project tracking. And we've integrated with Viewpoint, Power BI, and IFC. Third one is ALEC Engineering and Contracting. It's one of the largest contractors in the region. They're basically started with standardizing their documents as per ISO 19650, but then they moved into other use cases, like, for example, they used Morta for the HR department. They call it the People and Culture department, for newsletter content approval, Revisto implementation, and pre-qualification documents. So now we move to a live demo. Conscious of time, I'll just walk through two examples. So what you see here is a master information delivery planning and tracking tool that was previously developed. Just opening the Power BI report that was embedded within Morta, you'll be able to see that that report was created on data which resides in Morta tables. And you can flip through that report, filter it the way you want, and move through different sheets available within that report. Now, let me show you how you can create this from scratch. So as I said before, you don't have to necessarily start from scratch. You can start from a template that we've built, and you can then save that as a template for your team to access it and build documents later on. But you can simply create from template and then choose the resource by clicking on it and saying, use this template. This will duplicate this resource into your project or copy this resource into this project, and you can just fill the blanks wherever needed. I've done that for the IDP tracking. And what you basically see here are different sections that need to be filled, like project details and scope, etc., etc. One of the most important sections is the CDE connection. So what I'll do is I'll connect to Viewpoint, and I'll link this Viewpoint data, which is the submitted list of documents, to my plan. So simply to link to Viewpoint, you can browse these different integrations later, but click on Viewpoint for projects, choose the enterprise, choose the project you want to sync, and then sync the data. It'll take a couple of minutes depending on how big your data set is. In our case, it's a sample data set, so it's very small. As you can see here, those are the documents that are hosted or have been submitted on Viewpoint. So going back to the tracker, I have an AMA-IDP table. This is my plan. And I'll open this table and create a lookup. I think you're all familiar with VLOOKUPs in Excel. So Morta has something very similar in which you pick up the data from another table or another sheet in Excel or another workbook, and then you link two columns or more to each other. So I'm going to search for the deliverable reference ID, which is the document name. And then I'll bring in the created date and the created by. So you'll directly see here when I add this at the end of this table that these 5 documents have been submitted on the CDE. Now, one other thing that you can do is you can create dynamic views. So this is relating back to when I said that instead of creating 10 different sheets for 10 different originators or 10 different design teams, you can create one view that dynamically filters based on the user's tags. And the way you assign user tags is by going to settings, members, and then assigning the tags here. So if I change this to architecture and remove civil and go back to my document, I previously attached the IDP into that view, I can automatically see that I've filtered on the architecture discipline. The second use case that I'll quickly touch upon is the extraction of model data. Again, we can extract model data from Revit and IFC. And then we can do all sorts of things. So for example, in this IFC space table, you see we've extracted several spaces, and I've joined with the list of criteria from the client for certain elements. So for example, here we have minimum height and maximum height. And then what you can calculate is whether the height provided by the model actually conforms with this property. And you can see here that those 2 spaces do not have any issues, whereas the others do have some issues. So back to the presentation. I hope it was useful. And if you'd like to book a free demo, please reach out. You can scan the QR code or find me on Calendly. The URL is shown on the bottom right. So thank you for joining, and we'll answer your questions in the next bit.